you ever sit there, staring at the ceiling, wondering what in the world you're supposed to be doing with your life? That's where they were, lying awake in the quiet, the hum of the night pressing against the window, thoughts louder than the silence. They had plans once, big ones, dreams that felt so clear a few years ago, now tangled up in what-ifs and maybe-nots. Everywhere they looked, it seemed like everyone else had direction. Friends chasing careers, people posting milestones, couples getting married, having kids, starting businesses. And here they were, just still, breathing, waiting, trying, but not really sure what for. The restless season. They used to wake up full of excitement. Now, mornings felt heavy. They'd sit with a cup of coffee, staring out the window, watching the same street, the same trees, the same light. And somehow, everything around them looked like it was moving forward, except them. They scrolled through their phone and it only made it worse. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing, their calling, their path, their next step, but not them. They felt stuck between where they were and where they wanted to be, and no matter how hard they prayed, the answers didn't come. They whispered under their breath, "God, what am I even doing?" No thunder, no revelation, just quiet, the pressure to know. There's a strange kind of pressure that comes with not knowing, the kind that doesn't just sit on your shoulders, it wraps around your chest. You start thinking, maybe you're behind, maybe you missed your moment, maybe you're wasting time. They started asking questions like, what if I'm not where I'm supposed to be? What if I'm disappointing God? What if I never figure it out? They carried those thoughts like stones in a backpack. Heavy, unnecessary, but hard to put down. People around them meant well, but their words stung sometimes. You'll find your way soon. Just trust God's timing. Everything happens for a reason. They smiled, nodded, and said, "Yeah, I know." But deep down, they didn't know. They just knew it was hard to live in the in-between. When the map fades one afternoon, they went for a drive. No destination, just away. The sky was overcast, the kind that makes everything look softer, muted. They didn't turn on music, just drove, letting the hum of the tires fill the space. At a red light, they glanced at the GPS. It kept saying recalculating. They laughed a little under their breath. "That's me," they whispered. Recalculating. Every time they thought they had direction, something shifted. Every time they thought they were close, the road changed. It felt like God kept moving the goalposts, like he was testing their patience. But maybe he wasn't testing them. Maybe he was teaching them to trust when the map fades. The waiting room of life. Waiting is a strange kind of space. It's not empty, it's just quiet. And in that quiet, things grow. Faith grows. Patience grows. Dependence on God grows. But it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like stillness. And stillness can feel like failure when you measure yourself by movement. They spent months in that waiting room, trying to make sense of what wasn't happening. Opportunities fell through. Plans got delayed. Doors they prayed for stayed shut. They started to wonder if God forgot about them. But somewhere between the frustration and the faith, they began to notice small things. The sunrise looked softer. The prayers got more honest. The need to control started to fade. And one night, they whispered something they hadn't said before. "Maybe I don't need to know everything right now." It wasn't giving up. It was giving in. To peace. When God speaks through silence. One evening, They sat on the porch while the sun dipped low, streaks of gold spilling over the horizon. They didn't say much, just breathed. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel the need to rush the conversation with God. They didn't demand answers or direction. They just sat there, in the quiet, and realized something beautiful. God was there, even in the not knowing, even in the waiting. Sometimes His silence isn't absence, it's invitation. An invitation to trust deeper, to let go of the illusion of control. They felt a peace wash over them, not because everything made sense, but because it didn't have to. The beauty in not knowing. They started to see that life isn't supposed to be all figured out, that maybe the pressure to have it together was never from God. It was from the world, because God never asked for perfection, just presence. He never demanded certainty, just trust. They began to find beauty in uncertainty, in not having a 5-year plan, in not knowing what's next, in simply waking up and saying, God, whatever you want to do today, I'm open. That's when peace started to sneak in, not as an answer, but as an awareness. A conversation with God won. Night, unable to sleep, they started talking to God out loud. No script, no structure, just honesty. God, I don't know what you're doing, they said softly. I feel lost. Everyone else seems to have it figured out, and I'm just here, floating. The tears came, slow, tired, familiar. But if this is where you want me, I'll stay. Even if I don't understand it yet. They sat there, eyes closed, feeling the weight of surrender. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, but real. And somewhere deep inside, they heard it. Not an audible voice, but a knowing. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to trust me. The shift. That moment changed things. Not overnight, not suddenly, but slowly. They stopped forcing the timeline. They stopped comparing their pace to others. They stopped measuring progress by what they could see. They started measuring it by peace, by presence, by purpose in small things. They began journaling, not to plan, but to notice. The way God showed up in small ways. The friend who called at the right time, the random opportunity that aligned perfectly, the scripture that spoke exactly what their heart needed. God was moving, quietly, steadily, even when they couldn't see it. The world moves fast, but God moves right on time. We live in a world obsessed with next. Next goal, next step, next season. But God doesn't rush what's sacred. He doesn't hurry healing. He doesn't skip over the process just to meet your deadline. And that's what they were learning. That slow doesn't mean stuck. That being unsure doesn't mean being lost. That I don't know can still be holy ground when your heart is still surrendered. So they began to breathe again, deeply, freely. They didn't have it all figured out, but they had peace. And that was enough. The gentle reminder. Months later, they were sitting with a friend who was struggling, overwhelmed by life, lost in comparison, tired of waiting. Their friend sighed and said, I just feel like I should be further by now. And without thinking, they smiled softly and said, it's okay not to have it all figured out right now. You're not behind. You're just being built. Their own words hit them like an echo, because they weren't just speaking to their friend, they were reminding themselves too. The quiet confidence. They began walking through life differently. Still uncertain, still learning, but less afraid. They didn't wake up with all the answers, just a little more peace. They didn't know the full picture, just the next faithful step. And that was enough. They stopped trying to rush the story God was still writing. Because they realized, sometimes, the confusion is part of the construction. And maybe the silence wasn't God ignoring them. It was Him preparing them. The bittersweet ending. There are still nights when doubt visits. Still days when the unknown feels heavy. But now, instead of panicking, they pause, they breathe, they pray, they trust. Because they've seen God's faithfulness, not in fast answers, but in slow unfolding. They've learned that peace isn't found in having it all figured out. It's found in knowing that even when you don't, God does. So they smile, quietly, humbly, and whisper, maybe I don't need to have all the answers. Maybe I just need to walk with the one who does. And somehow, that's enough. You don't have to rush to understand where you are. You don't have to force clarity. You don't have to chase certainty. God isn't disappointed that you don't have it all together. He's delighted that you're still coming to Him. You don't need to have it all figured out right now. You just need to trust that even in the fog, even in the waiting, even in the wondering, you are right where you're supposed to be. Because the truth is, life isn't about having it all mapped out. It's about walking in faith when the map fades, and trusting that the one leading you knows exactly where you're going.